The second is the inner safety. And my thesis is that the most powerful form of inner safety is self-empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
It's the belief, the inner knowing that I can meet any challenge, right?
Yeah.
And that comes with practice. So I think about skills and capacity. When we develop skills and practice those skills, the skills of mindfulness, meditation, right? Skills of psychotherapy, psychospirituality. As we practice those skills, we're building our capacity to hold more experience, more challenging experience,
yes.
right? So with more capacity and with more skillfulness, we can feel more prepared to meet the great unknown in mystical experiences.
Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and riches blessings to all of you, and thank you for tuning in to Take Back Your Mind. I am your host, Michael B. Beckwith, the founder of the Agape International Spiritual Center, and I'm privileged and honored to, on a weekly basis, get to speak to individuals who in one way, shape, form, or another have taken back their mind. Taken back their mind from the sea of mental garbage, from the status quo of the world of lack, limitation, scarcity, fear, doubt, worry, deep sense of separation. Because as you know, we have a mind, but we're not the mind. The mind is oftentimes a set of programs. And oftentimes those programs we did not put there. And we live a life of trauma and fear, deep sense of separation. So I come together with great beings that are doing great work on the planet. And we dive into their story and get a real sense of how they are taking back the mind and how they are assisting others. Today I have Austin Mao, and you're here in person. Thank you for being here, brother. Let me tell you just a little bit about him in case you don't know. Entrepreneur, author, poet, keynote speaker on the intersection of science and spirituality, psychology, and shamanism. He's a co-founder of Ceremonia, a nonprofit psychedelic church facilitating change makers and creators through what 96% of alumni share as the most profound experience of their lives. Austin has guided more than 400 individuals through their transformation towards living a life of inspired creativity, purpose, and peace. He has worked with some of the most prominent business leaders of the modern world, helping them harness their inner power to create greater impact through love and inspired creation. His process of modern enlightenment, a path to awaken, heal, and manifest, is informed by the most advanced technologies of psychotherapy and neuroscience combined with ancient shamanistic wisdom and spiritual traditions. This is Austin Mao. And recently he was just sharing when we were offline about the fact that they are about to receive a license for this natural medicine to be used very prominently in Denver, Colorado.
That's right.
Tell us about that. And welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel so much gratitude sitting here with you, Michael.
Thank you.
We're really in a historic time right now because Colorado's Natural Medicine Health Act has legalized psilocybin as a natural medicine that can be used for both spiritual and clinical facilitation, and will be one of the first centers licensed to train and license other practitioners, as well as a healing center ourselves.
Wow. It's very powerful because the government shut that down back in the 60s. You know, historically, a lot of it had to do with the fact that they were seeking to keep people from waking up. I remember Nixon, I don't know if you were alive then, but Richard Nixon shut down a lot of the alpha training, a lot of the psychedelic training, because people were waking up and they were standing up against the war. They were not being puppets by the government. And so it's this arc of all those years and then coming back to natural medicine, it's natural. It comes from the ground. It comes from Mother Nature. Now being used for spiritual awakening and for healing is a very powerful arc of history that we're living in right now.
It's interesting because a lot of people aren't aware of this.
Yeah.
The drug war and DARE and Nancy Reagan's campaign has really implanted into the socio-cultural mindset of like drugs are bad.
Right.
The reality is in the 50s and 60s, LSD, psilocybin therapy was the most studied drug in the history of psychiatry.
Right.
Over 100,000 participants in over 1,000 studies by the leading academic institutions in the world,
right.
Harvard, Yale, etc. Right. And the story actually goes a little bit deeper because Nixon wasn't necessarily afraid of people waking up. He wanted to disenfranchise minority voters. And so
and that too.
yeah. I mean, which is I think a blemish on America's history.
Right.
And at the same time, that just happened.
Right.
And so we went from a psychedelic revolution where this was the most exciting development in psychiatry, in mental health, and in spirituality of the modern era to a psychedelic blackout.
Right.
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 Until the 2010s, when Johns Hopkins University in 2013 started being able to study this again and publish papers, leading to a number of academic institutions, including Hopkins, Harvard, Imperial College of London, sharing that not only is working with natural medicines in a therapeutic context beneficial and productive for treatments like PTSD, depression, etc., but it's orders of magnitude more effective, like 3 times more effective than the most effective psychiatric drug.
Absolutely.
Period.
Absolutely.
And it's such a huge moment for us in our mental and spiritual.
Yeah. And one more thing before I want to get into your story a little bit.
Sure.
But I like the fact that the terminology is natural medicine.
Yeah.
It's not drugs.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that blemish on it that these are drugs. This is natural stuff pretty much. Psilocybin, etc. Yeah. Now tell us about you. I mean, what is your backstory? How did you evolve to become a part of this whole movement?
This distinction between drugs and medicine is actually a good segue.
Okay.
Because I think about the difference between drug, medicine, and sacrament.
Yeah.
Right?
And medicine is not the medicine we're talking about in terms of AMA medicine. It's like real medicine.
Medicine that is healing at a mind, body, and spirit level.
Right.
I've been an entrepreneur multiple times over. Finance, tech, real estate. And a few years ago, a dear friend, a mutual friend of ours, Keith Farazi, invited me. I think he used to come regularly to your church.
When we were at the other building, he was there all the time.
I remember being in Vegas at Tony Hsieh's party, and he's like, "You should come to this retreat. You'd be great there." You didn't tell me anything more.
Right.
So I signed up for this ayahuasca retreat in Mexico, thinking that it was a networking opportunity. I mean, Keith wrote a book called Never Eat Alone.
Bait and switch.
Yeah. And, at that time, I had a chip on my shoulder going into it because I had already done psychedelics like 100 times recreationally, many years of Burning Man, festivals, camping with friends as a drug, recreationally, right? And so when I went in Mexico, I remember like reading the preparatory documents, and it said, take this seriously. This can be life-changing, eat healthy, don't drink coffee, don't drink alcohol. And I was like, oh, that's stupid. And I closed my laptop and I took a sip of my margarita,
You weren't all in yet.
No. So when I went into the ceremony, consuming the medicine at that time, what I experienced first in my first ceremony is an embrace of my mother's love, like feeling a vision of drinking the milk from her breast and feeling an incredible amount of safety that I don't have a recollection of experiencing ever, which already was so extraordinary. I often describe to people like that kind of a psychedelic experience, and I know you've had these, is it's kind of like a dream. When you're in a dream, you don't know you're in a dream. It feels like reality. And you're not watching a memory like a reel on a film or reading it in a book. you are living it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was living that experience, and it was so profoundly healing. The second experience I had was being able to introduce to my father, who had passed 4 years prior, my wife,
Mm-hmm.
who he never got a chance to meet. I thought I had grieved him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I had processed that. I didn't know that I was missing the missed opportunities in my life that he would never get to experience.
Mm.
And there was so much catharsis in that. But it was really the second experience that completely changed my life. After that first one, I was like, hallelujah, I am healed. I can go home now.
Right.
But in that experience, we had 3 ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
Before going into the second experience, I remember being posed a question, like, can you recount a fond memory from childhood?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was a complete fog in my mind. I couldn't even remember one.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in with this question of like, why can't I remember things? Even a few months back was hazy.
Right.
So as I underwent the medicine, I started to relive my memories in vivid detail. I could turn my locker combination in high school. I remember feeling the texture of books that I used to read. And I was going back and back and back in time until I was a child under sheets. And it was total darkness. Okay? And then at that moment, I felt horny.
Mm-hmm.
And I popped up a yoga mat in the middle of the jungle, and I said, what the heck? How could that be? And when I went back in, I realized that I was touched as a boy in a way that no boy ever should be.
Right.
And it just clicked for me, like, oh my God, I repressed all of my memory. And that experience of confusion, of pleasure as a 4-year-old, as guilt, of shame, of all the things a 4-year-old mind didn't know how to hold. Your shows Take Back Your Mind.
Right.
That helped me take back my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved forward in time and feeling the reverberations of that traumatic moment and the repression of my memory. I was a bully as a kid, I had sexual confusion as a teenager. As an adult, I couldn't hold on to relationships because I couldn't remember the love that we had shared.
Right.
It was simply wiped away.
Right.
All the way to the present moment where I was lying on that yoga mat in the jungle, tears in my eyes, and I said, thank God. Thank God that I feel like I was cured of Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm. Wow, this is powerful. So you had a great healing. Not only you got your memory back, but there was a transmutation of the guilt and all of the confusion that happened at 4 years old that kind of got cleared up in a very short period of time.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's, I had an extraordinarily powerful experience. And in that moment, it heralded the renaissance of my life. And at the same time, it provided me what we call in psychology an index experience, a reference experience. It says, wow, I can feel this way. I can experience life this way. And then it's taken me many years to actually bring that into my life in a grounded way.
Right. There's you have the insight, then you have to stabilize it some kind of way. You have to integrate with it.
Yes.
And that's the whole processes and the stages of healing.
Yes.
Yeah. Now you talk about different stages of healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you frame it?
I think I want to start at the end, which
Okay.
is manifesting.
Okay.
Right? It's my belief that what feels like our dharma, our purpose in life, where we feel the most connected with the doingness that we put out in the world, right, is when we are projecting into the path of healing that we took ourselves. For me, it's natural medicine. For others, it's yoga. For even others, it's technology. It's how we are able to experience connection with ourselves. I've heard the word gratitude is defined as like the experience of having value in something. And what can be more valuable than our history of getting to wholeness? And so when we're sharing that with others, we are able to sit in that state of gratitude by being in service to others.
Right.
Now, in order to have that feeling of gratitude, one must arrive at an integrated sense of wholeness, right? In order to arrive at one's sense of integrated level of wholeness, one must be able to meet themselves where they're at, right? At any given moment, that I can not only experience the awareness and the acceptance of who I am, but to love what is, in Byron Katie's words.
Right. So you started at the inn, and so can you take us through those healing stages?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fundamentally kind of what we facilitate
Right.
in Ceremonia. The first stage of awakening, I believe, begins with awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You share with the world so many mindfulness practices,
Yeah.
right? And when we are able to sit with ourselves, to sit with our breath, we are enhancing the awareness of what we are experiencing right now.
Right.
I believe that fundamentally what consciousness wants to do is know that what we're experiencing is real,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some say we're in a simulation, etc.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And what that means is, if you think back to like how kids are raised, when kids cry or when kids are getting angry, parents often say, "Don't do that. Put a smile on your face."
Mm-hmm.
And so at that moment, as a child, our children begin to deny our experience of reality. I shouldn't feel angry. I shouldn't feel guilty. I shouldn't feel sad. I should be happy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the repetition of that, the programming of that, as you alluded to in the beginning of this conversation, ingrains in us that what we're experiencing is not real and it's not important.
Mm-hmm.
And what that ends up being is, I'm not important,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so by developing...
And also repression and suppression of memory and things like that.
Yes.
Which you experienced. Yeah.
because it makes me feel bad. I don't want to feel bad,
Yeah.
so I'm going to push it away,
Mhm.
right? And so what that ends up doing is we become shells of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So developing our awareness is the first step. But the second step, did you say you had Jack Kornfield on?
I had, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I did.
So Jack Kornfield says that mindfulness needs to be met with equal parts loving kindness.
Absolutely.
Because we can have awareness on our parts, but if we are not meeting ourselves with compassion,
Yes.
then it's a double-edged sword. We can generate more guilt and shame
Right.
inside of us,
Right.
right? And so the second step is attention. How do we hold attention on the pieces of ourselves that we've pushed down, that we
Mhm.
don't like?
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of attention is fight, flight, or freeze,
Mhm.
the trauma response,
Right.
right? So training our inner system first for awareness, and then to be able to hold attention with loving kindness and with curiosity and courage on
Non-judgmental.
ourselves,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's the next step.
Yeah.
And the third step is intention. How do we now live our lives with the beingness that we've experienced from the awareness and intention? When we're able to apply attention on the tender, wounded child parts of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
there's this natural movement into greater healing, greater wholeness, right? And when we are able to apply that regularly, integrate it into our lives with intention and sharing that with others, that creates a feedback loop. We're constantly like, man, it feels good to actually feel my sadness, my grief. It feels good to feel my anger. And I get to do that more and more and more.
Right. And when you're not suppressing or pushing it away, and you're paying attention to it without judgment, then those particular coagulated opinions, thought forms, and perceptions begin to kind of disintegrate. It's a healing
Yeah.
that can't happen if you're sublimating them. But if you're paying attention without judgment, everything changes on a subatomic level based on observation. But you combine observation with compassion, that's when healing happens. And then you as you're talking about, you can be more you're actually becoming more yourself. You're not adding anything to yourself. You are eliminating the filter that's preventing you from being you. And so this is what happened to you. You were a serial entrepreneur, successful in many ways. You were using the psychedelics more as a party kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into this sacred space and all heaven breaks loose.
I love that. It breaks loose.
You know, and so from then, I guess that's when your path changed in life. That was the pivotal moment that said, I found my dharma. This is what I want to do with my life. I want to assist people to wake up. I want to assist people to discover themselves. Is that when that happened?
Yeah.
I mean, I know there had to be moments of integration, embodiment, normalization of that state. But at that moment, did you know you were going to be doing what you're doing now? You worked with so many people. Did you know it then?
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
I had an inner knowing and I didn't yet have the courage to do it.
Yes.
And I imagine that everyone who is in service follows that same path.
Absolutely.
Even Ram Dass.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I had an initial opening, a big, where I couldn't get back in the box of my old personality. And I knew what I saw and see is real. And I was integrating and holding that space. But when it came time to take the next step in terms of being of service in a bigger way, I resisted it for a while. It's like, no, I kind of like being right here.
Yeah.
And I was forced out of that egg.
Yeah.
Everybody goes through that kind of resistance. Not everybody, but many people do.
I would actually say everybody.
Yeah. It's like, but the ego doesn't want you to do it because the ego is afraid of the unknown.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, it's stay right in here. We know all of this.
Yeah.
We don't know that. Yeah.
And it's part of the process.
Yeah.
You know, when I had my awakening,
Mm-hmm.
So my business at the time, a lot of people don't know this, is I had the largest Airbnb operation in Las Vegas.
Wow.
We specialize in large homes that serve 16 people or more, and you could just imagine the kind of groups that came with 16 people or more in Vegas.
You had everything going on there.
Right. So I was living in Costa Rica after this this awakening and regularly doing plant medicine and learning how to work with these natural medicines. And then meanwhile, I'm getting a call afterwards, feeling like, can you check the security cams? There's a rapper filming a music video here, and the neighbors are pissed. You know, I'm just like, what is happening with my life? This misalignment that was happening.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And there, I just started listening more and more to the universe, like arriving at a place where I mustered the courage to realize that the universe was telling me through the friction and the resistance that I was experiencing that I was misaligned.
Right.
And the path of alignment was to listen to my heart.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And thus Ceremonia was born.
Right. And Ceremonia is in Denver.
Yeah.
That's the base.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a person comes to Ceremonia, I mean, what actually happens?
Yes. So Ceremonia, first of all, is state and federal level legal.
It's a church.
It's a church.
Yeah.
It's a church. And also state level legal within Colorado, Natural Medicine Health Act. And the way that we approach natural medicines is very different than most organizations. And I think it's something that you'll appreciate because what we're really about is spirituality and connection.
Yes.
Right? What that means for us is that everything that we do is community focused. When people sign up, they get buddy paired with an alumnus.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that goes into an unknown, potentially transformative experience has some level of anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. And so they get paired with someone who went through that same journey. Mm-hmm. Then they get to come to our Sunday service right off the bat, where our alumni are integrating in community using tools and practices that we facilitated, that they learned in the actual retreat. By the time people actually sit on a mat, get to a retreat, they already feel some level of wonder, awe, and connection. Right?
They've been connected to the community at some level, even before. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Then we do workshops from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. informed by the most advanced protocols in modern science, but also really informed by mindfulness practices. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we begin with meditation, then we go into connection exercises, then we go into psychotherapeutic exercises where each individual is facilitating someone else in the group and themselves. Mm-hmm. So by the time people actually consume the natural medicine in ceremony, people feel like they often relate, it's like they did a meditation retreat with their best friends for a week, and then they sit with medicine. Mm-hmm. What happens is that, the psychedelic experience is 100% determined by how safe you feel, right?
Right.
All of life seeks out safety because life wants to create life.
Right.
And there's two kinds of safety: inner safety and outer safety, which is setting and set, right?
Right.
Outer safety is like, how safe do I feel in this space? How safe do I feel with the facilitators? How safe do I feel with this group of people that I didn't know 24 hours before, right? And in most therapeutic or ceremonial containers, people come in, they shake hands, 2 hours later they're tripping together, and there's a a sharp limit to how safe you can possibly feel in that, right? And so what we're building towards is so much connection that people relate. They feel within 4 hours that they're closer to each other in that room than family. And so a huge amount of safety. The second is the inner safety. And my thesis is that the most powerful form of inner safety is self-empowerment. It's the belief, the inner knowing that I can meet any challenge, right?
Yeah.
And that comes with practice. So I think about skills and capacity. When we develop skills and practice those skills, the skills of mindfulness, meditation, right? Skills of psychotherapy, psychospirituality. As we practice those skills, we're building our capacity to hold more experience, more challenging experience, right? So with more capacity and with more skillfulness, we can feel more prepared to meet the great unknown in mystical experiences. So as an example, the last workshop before our ceremony is a cold plunge. Now, most people hear that and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. But that's actually the point. Because a cold plunge, I believe, is one of the best preparations for an experience that we don't know what it's going to be like, or we actually believe our body believes it's going to kill us.
Right.
And then we notice, we become aware of our expectations, and then we hold attention on the actual somatic experience, the sensation when we're in it, which proves to us 100% of the people that do it say that they actually enjoy it afterwards, which is crazy, right? Yeah. And so it develops that inner knowing that we don't have to be afraid of unexpected things.
Right.
And then a break and then ceremony.
That's beautiful. I like that whole process. Now, did you create Ceremonia? You're the founder, right?
I co-founded with my wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
I met her, right? Yeah, I remember. She has really buoyant energy. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. She's the embodiment of divine feminine.
It was beautiful. I can see her smiling now. She just came up, started talking to me as if we were and known each other forever.
Yes.
And it was just very beautiful conversation. I remember. So you and your wife founded this. So all of this is based on your own experience, your own felt experience of what you went through, and you put together this church.
Yeah. And it's more than just us.
Obviously, I know there's a team, and
something that I think is really special about being an entrepreneur is that entrepreneurs can't do everything themselves.
Right.
And so we learn not only the practice of taking risk, but the skill of surrounding ourselves with great talent. And so we have co-facilitators that are like, there's one of our co-facilitators was a Catholic priest for 20 years, then became a Zen monk, then became one of the world's top psychologists. Another one was a psychedelic therapist for 50 years, trained thousands of trauma therapists, and has worked with MAPS. So we surrounded ourselves with the best of the best, with the vision, the promise of developing this integrated model that is scalable and sustainable for the world.
So Ceremonia is a church, and you have ceremony every week?
Okay. We do 2 retreats a month. Soon it will be every week as we roll out this facilitator training.
Yeah, I'm trying to envision this in my mind. And so there are many people, I guess, that they live in Denver and they come on a regular basis. They're alumni. Then there are people that fly in just for the retreat aspect of it. Okay. Now, when you talk about the psychotherapeutic experiences that people are having, what do those look like?
So I believe that the end point of psychology is the beginning point of spirituality.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that we're in what's called the third wave of psychology. The first wave was Pavlov, I ring a bell, dog salivates, humans the same thing. The second was like cognitive behavioral therapy. Change your thoughts, change your mind, state changes, right? The third wave of psychology is a more integrated model, which includes mindfulness, right? So when we do psychotherapeutic exercises, all of our facilitators have training in internal family systems, which is parts work, Gestalt therapy, somatic experiencing, lots of different fields, right? But the important thing for participants is content versus process. When you go to a therapist or you go to a traditional ceremony, lots of content comes up, the emotions, stories, beliefs that come up. And someone is there to help you process that, right? But we believe that the most important skill that people can learn is to learn the processes to hold themselves, aka self-empowerment, right? And so in our retreats, people are facilitating others and themselves so that they're learning the tools themselves. What happens with that is not only does that promote deeper and safer transformations in the psychedelic experience itself, what it does is that it creates a lasting, durable methodology to bring into life's future uncertainties. Because life's going to continue to...
Well, the phenomenon is always changing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so as you are grounding this in your system, those processes are going to serve you for lifelong. And that's why we believe integration begins with good preparation.
Yeah.
Because you're practicing how to be with yourself.
Right. So when they're facilitating each other, and what does that look like? What are some of the skills?
The primary one that we teach as a foundation is a process called circling. Have you ever done circling?
Maybe it wasn't called that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Want to try it on?
Sure.
Okay, so it begins with the question, what's it like to be you right now? What's it like to be you right this moment?
Right now there's a bubbling up of joy and curiosity and kind of a sense of openness. Yeah.
What does that feel like in your body?
Right now it feels kind of a relaxation, like a sense of it feels good. Yeah.
Yeah. What's relaxation like?
It's like I'm here and I'm not concerned about where I'm going. I'm just right here. And I'm grateful, and the gratitude's not attached to anything.
Wow. It's so interesting. I'm hearing you're here and there's also a non-attachment at the same time.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. I'm not attached, yes.
And what's it like to be here and not attached at the same time?
It feels like I'm in full participation, but I'm not attached to any outcome of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's it like to notice that?
Just more awareness.
Yeah. So that's circling.
Okay.
It's effectively the questions that I asked you are approaching you with curiosity and compassion, empathy, right? And what, it begins with the question, what's it like to be you? Or what's it like to be us?
Yes.
And then the curiosity part is effectively, what's that like? Because when you say joy means something to you, and I can have a presumption of what that means to me.
Yeah.
But I can ask you, what's that like for 1,000 years, and just get a fraction of what it's actually like to be you right now.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you do these particular processes, and it's preparing people to actually go into ceremony. And, and before that, they're jumping into a cold plunge.
Yeah.
So they realize that they're going to come out alive.
Yeah.
With something that might be scary.
Totally. I mean, consider just the question alone, what's it like to be me right now in a psychedelic experience, right? So let's map, for those that have not done psychedelics, let's map that to flow state, right? Or let's map that to a really challenging experience, like with a fight with our significant other, right? If we just take a breath and say, oh, I'm fighting with my partner right now. What's it like to be me right now? Oh my God, I'm feeling this tension here in my body. I'm feeling this heat rise up in my face. Oh, what's that like? What's it like to feel empathy for those parts, etc.?
Yeah.
Such a valuable skill, because curiosity is the energy of openness, to embrace what is instead of close off from it.
Right. Yeah. So you basically have combined mindfulness, compassion, and great non-judgmental observation. It's a counseling session.
And what's cool about that is, on top of what you just shared, it's connection. Because imagine a group of, let's
connection.
say, 10 people, right, doing that for each other. We do it as a group, and let's say one person says, I'm feeling
anxious,
right? Then another person might say, I'm also feeling anxious. And then someone could be like, oh, what's that like to feel anxiety? What happens is, so much of, I think, the psycho-spiritual process is making the unconscious conscious.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's what awakening is. Yeah.
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 And that's a necessary component for connection.
Yeah.
It's when we are holding back,
Yeah.
right? First from ourselves and then from each other.
Right.
That we are disconnected, we're separated.
Right. No, I like the process. It reminds me of a lot of things we do here at Agape.
Totally.
We don't call it circling, but we just call it spiritual counseling.
Beautiful.
But it's very, it makes people more conscious of what's going on, body, mind, emotional body, without judgment. And then from there, in a non-reactive state, you can actually intend something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. To respond rather than react.
Absolutely. This is beautiful. So how many people are in your retreats generally?
Usually we'll have somewhere between like 10 and 16 participants, and somewhere around a 1 to 3 like facilitator to participant ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to just see it in my mind's eye. So this happens every Sunday, that retreat?
We have 2 retreats a month right now.
Yeah.
They conclude every Sunday.
Okay.
And then they conclude on Sundays, and then every Sunday we have Sunday service.
Yeah, I was going to say.
where we do circling.
Right.
So what's
so
cool,
Sunday service is circling?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there any music involved?
No. So what's interesting is people finish a retreat at 1 p.m. and we have a potluck for people, alumni coming in, and then the people that just finished the retreat immediately go into Sunday service doing circling. And so they get wrapped up in the community.
This is after they've done their psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
So now they come back to paying attention to themselves about where they are at this moment, how they've changed. They can see their transformation.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because what's cool is like community, I believe, is so essential for integration.
Yes.
Right. And what I share with people coming out of like on Sunday morning is we are going to feel guilt and shame. We are going to mess up because, and Ram Dass talks about this, like when Ram Dass calls it getting high, right? When you've gotten high, aka awakened, you see the truth of who you are and the truth of the universe.
Right.
And when you come back down, there are going to be times where you break that truth, right? Where you don't act in your highest self, right?
Right.
And when that happens, community can be there to support you, to remind you that it's part of the process.
That's why community exists, for that purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I would say that's why church existed.
Yeah.
What church kind of was before.
Yeah.
Before it became so much doctrine and
dogmatic
dogma and guilt and shaming people, etc.
Right.
Yeah.
It left its origins.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew Ram Dass well, and did workshops with him.
Oh.
And we co-taught.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I remember one time he called and then he said, "Can you fly down? We're going to do this thing together." And I flew down there, and I'm waiting in the room. The people have arrived from around the world, and he had fallen in the shower and gotten injured, and so I was left to do it by myself. And people had come to see Ram Dass. Okay, and so I said, "Okay, here we go." So, I started speaking, and after about 20, 30 minutes, the people were comfortable with me, But I could always remember, I said, "Oh, man." Then the next time I went, he was okay. We did it together. It was sweet and wonderful. But I remember that first time, it was like, these people, many people knew who I was, but Ram Dass was the draw,
Right.
Right. And I said, these people have traveled all around the world to see Ram Dass, and they're bumping into me. But, it turned out well.
But what my experience of what you represent and your values is, there's this song called Spiral. It says, there are many religions, but the truth is only one.
It's only one.
Is that what you are sharing is the same thing as what Ram Dass is sharing.
Absolutely.
Same thing as what Buddha shared and Christ shared.
Right.
It's that the path is into ourselves and through ourselves.
Right.
Into the universe.
Right. Right. I'm really appreciating. I knew about Ceremonia, but having you sit here with me, and we talked a little bit about it in Denver. I can see it now. I can see it's very, very powerful. What comes up for you right now that we want to share with these beings? Anything about yourself and your path, or the whole process?
What I feel passionate about is we're going to look back on this moment 10 years from now when psilocybin, natural medicines are federally legal.
Right.
There's incredible research, incredible empirical evidence that suggests it is thus, I mean, this already exists, but the culture at large is going to be so much more aware of its effectiveness. I mean, look at, let's say, cannabis and even CBD, right? My mom is taking CBD gummies almost on a daily basis right now.
Right.
10 years ago, she would have sworn that off.
She would have said, that's a drug, I'm not going to do it.
Exactly.
Right.
And I had the good fortune of my mother being in our retreat a year ago. And I also helped facilitate her through her first natural medicine experience. The first time, which was 3 years ago, she got off of all of her pharmaceuticals, her antidepressants, after 20 plus years of treatment-resistant depression. She would wake up and just stare into blankness for 3 hours every morning, right? And after that, she started pursuing her passion in life, which is singing in choir, Christian choir. Right? Last June, she came to our retreat. After that experience, a month later, she went into the doctor's office for a biopsy. She had tumors on her liver before, and they disappeared.
They were gone.
They were gone.
Yeah.
And the doctor was like, how's that possible? You know? And so if I like to use my mom as an avatar, it's like, if she could do it, right. Like our parents could do it, like there's a great hope, right? And so I think we're going to look back on this 10 years from now, and what my vision is to share with the world that there is so much more to psychedelic medicine than what even the research is capable of showing right now.
Right.
Because the research is following a clinical model, right? So a clinical model is like, you come into a doctor's office, it's all white, you have things hooked up to you, and you're taking medicine, blindfold, earphones on and listening to music, and then someone evaluates you afterwards. And there are many centers that follow that medical model, right? On the total opposite side of the spectrum is the shamanistic model, which we're very familiar with. You go to the jungle, and sometimes, of course, there's many places in the US, but let's say you go to the jungle and you ingest a natural medicine, and then people are waving feathers and blowing smoke, et cetera, and there's like a shamanistic, ritualistic practices that don't map to our modern lives. What I think is extraordinary right now, where we're at and what Ceremonia represents and what we're going to be teaching people, is the synthesis of the two. Yes. Because the shamanistic, we're really combining the Western medical model, which has a high standard of care, rigorous science to prove proven techniques. The Eastern model, which is mindfulness, meditation, deep, like, spiritual paths that are thousands of years old. And then the South American model, which is the indigenous model, which also carries thousands of years of wisdom of how to facilitate these processes. And it's that intersection that I hope that the world begins to embrace more and more.
Right. It sounds like you've done that. I used to be kind of a snob, against a lot of it, because I saw people doing it more as a party kind of thing. And they would go to some place and come back and say they were a shaman after 6 months or something, you know what I mean?
Totally.
And have these things in people's living rooms. And I would share, I said, you're taking something that has thousands of years of tradition that was very sacred to indigenous people, and you're trying to condense it into, like, let's go get high or something to that effect, I had feelings about that.
Yeah.
You're taking something as sacred. But the way you are approaching it, you have synthesized the best of all these particular worlds. You're creating the community, you're creating the connection, you're creating a introspection without judgment. I can feel the excellence of the work, and I can feel it in you as a human being, and so it's beautiful. So
one of my guiding principles from one of my teachers in the ayahuasca lineage was that a facilitator should endeavor to be invisible. In other words, that we should get out of the way to allow the participant their process. Right?
Yeah.
And modern science is actually proving this out too, because MAPS created this concept called the inner healing intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that, I'll use a metaphor. When you go to a doctor with a wound, and the doctor sutures up your wound,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the doctor healing you.
That's right.
They're just providing the conditions for your body to heal itself.
Right.
The inner healing intelligence, the idea of it is, it's not the medicine, it's not the facilitator, it's not the music, it's not the smoke or the feather waving that is healing you. They're just providing the conditions for you to heal yourself.
Absolutely.
And to respond to what you just shared about other facilitators, sometimes what happens with facilitators is they get wrapped up in their own ego,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, I'm a healer and I am healing you. What happens there that I think is very problematic in the field is it disempowers the individual.
Right.
Because anytime we look outside of ourselves
Right.
for something that is really inside of ourselves,
Right.
right? Number one, we're giving up our power. And the reason why we're giving up our power is because it can, at that moment, feel easier to do so.
Absolutely.
Right?
No self-empowerment.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so the orientation, everything that we do as facilitators, and when I develop curriculum, it's all aimed at how do we help people feel powerful to feel themselves more.
Right. Yeah. Now, I'm with that. Everything you're saying, the facilitator becoming invisible, absolutely. I always say that, we're not healing you. What's healing you is truth.
Yes.
Activated truth.
With a T, capital T.
Yeah, activated truth.
Yeah.
And you caught it.
Yeah.
You had an insight around it. And what we did is create the condition for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is beautiful.
And what I think is really special about that concept is if you really think about it, it says something extraordinary about humanity and consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That if we just allow ourselves to exist, if we're actually able to embrace ourselves, the natural orientation of our psycho-spiritual body is towards love,
Absolutely.
peace, connection, joy,
It's our intrinsic nature.
gratitude.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like your metaphor of the doctor. You get cut, you take out the dirt, the body heals itself.
Yes.
It's intrinsically, it's going to go towards wholeness and healing.
And so that, for me, brings a lot of hope, not just for human beings, but for humanity as a whole.
Yeah.
So earlier, around 10 minutes into this podcast, you said a thing that I was like, I want to put a pin in this and
Come
bring it
to
back.
Uh-huh.
And you said something to the fact that everything changes,
Mhm.
right? And there's a Buddhist teacher named Suzuki Hiroshi that was asked to summarize all of Buddhism in one
Thousands of
phrase.
years. Yeah.
And that's the word that he said. He said, everything changes.
Mm.
And what's interesting about mindfulness is when you meditate and you just pay attention to your breath and you just notice the sensations and experiences that are coming up, you can notice that they're changing,
Mm-hmm.
that our senses. Where we get stuck as human beings is somehow we have ingrained in us a belief that what we're feeling isn't going to change,
Right.
right? That if I'm feeling anger or shame or sadness right now, it's not going to change. But when we actually are aware of it and focus on it, it changes. And
It
we see
changes.
that.
Absolutely.
And so when we allow that, secondarily, the change is towards love.
Yeah.
The orientation is towards love.
Right.
And sometimes that can take a while. The
Right.
grief can take a while to change towards love, but it changes.
Absolutely.
And that's the beautiful thing about being human. you
Right.
know?
It's fantastic. And then you also let go of the attachment to
Yeah.
whatever you want to try to hold on to at that particular moment,
Yeah,
and you let the change take place.
exactly.
Yeah.
What Buddha called clinging.
Yeah. Clinging, which causes suffering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. This has been great. Anything that you don't want to leave in your heart before we close, that you feel that I should have brought this up when I was with Michael? And also tell the audience where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find us at ceremoniacircle.org,
Mhm.
Ceremonia with an IA. We're also on Instagram, YouTube, etc. at Ceremonia Circle. As I shared, we're legal and a nonprofit, and we're right now we've gotten to the place where we're guaranteeing results
Mm-hmm.
and guaranteeing transformation.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is if people come and they don't experience what they would themselves describe as a transformation,
Right.
they can have all their money back.
Right.
Right. And that's something that is also, I think, really exciting about this field. It's that out of 200 alumni, we've only had 1 or 2 cases that might exercise that, and they're coming back to us. Like the rate of transformation is near 100%, and it's incredible. And what transformation means is that
was going to be my next question. How are you defining transformation? Yeah.
I mean, let me put it this way. I recently went through a speaker training with actually a mutual friend of ours, Eric and Meads, and it was all about storytelling. And we were set to make a story journal of like stories from our past that we can bring onto the stage. And as I was doing that, I realized that I couldn't use any stories from before my awakening with plant medicine, right? Because it just completely doesn't represent who I am anymore or what I stand for.
Right.
And so what I experienced wasn't a new chapter in my life. It was a complete sequel of who I am.
Yeah.
After my awakening, I started writing again, playing music. I doubled my business's revenue in 6 months, getting healthy, repaired my relationship with my mom, with my ex-girlfriends who are now some of my closest friends, living a life of purpose. And it happened like that, which is so wild to even share with people.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. You popped out of that paradigm.
Yes. Yeah.
Into a whole nother dimension of living.
And the closest proxy that people can describe this as is a near-death experience.
Yeah.
Right? Where people have this experience, often related experience of deep peace in the fully letting go. In fact, Ram Dass shared that when we die, that last breath is the complete letting go, no matter how much you resisted it.
Right.
And after near-death experiences, people often have tremendous transformations.
Sure. Yeah. I call them near-life experiences.
Near-life experiences, exactly.
Yeah. And they have a similar testimony that we're here to perfect our loving.
Yes.
Primarily. That's why we're here, to perfect the loving, to be ambassadors of the cosmic love that's seeking to express itself.
Yes.
And know itself as us.
Yes.
Yeah. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
This is Mr. Mao. Ceremonia is a great destination place. And everything that he was talking about in terms of the community, the connection, the introspection without judgment, all of that, very powerful. It feels safe. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you, Michael. It's been such a pleasure.
God bless you, man. Doing great work.
Yeah.
Peace and blessings, everyone. You can see how to get in contact with him, and I'm glad you're tuning in today. You're in the position of extracting your mind from the sea of mental garbage, creating a state within yourself where your natural proclivity towards love and compassion can begin to emerge. Peace and blessings. Blessings to you, and thank you for tuning in to Take Back Your Mind. This is the portion of our podcast in which we actually do some level of practice. Not a long period of time, just a short practice of meditation. Meditation is often defined as paying attention, unconditional, uninterrupted attention to that which is real, that which is eternal. A moment in which the phenomena and the content of one's consciousness ceases to be our identification, and you see, not with eyes, but you see with consciousness that which is eternal, that which is forever, that which is of love and of the presence that is never in absence. And so we sit. There are different kinds of meditation practices, just as there are many different kinds of people. But ultimately, there is a moment of insight and integration, embodiment, and then living a different life. Insight is an event that takes place in your awareness where you suddenly or incrementally know something that you may have formerly believed. And then through a continued spiritual practice, there's an integration of that insight, so it's not just a passing memory. And then with that insight becoming integrated and embodied, your way of living changes. Your behavior changes. You become a greater expression of who you are. You're not adding anything to yourself. You're simply becoming a living revelation of your real self. That's ultimately where meditation leads us. As I said, there are many kinds of meditation practices, but ultimately it's about spiritual liberation, moksha, freedom, and living on the edge of great discovery of oneself, and then ultimately great expression. Because discovery without expression is only half the formula. You have to have discovery and insight, but you also have to have expression. Okay, that's my opening monologue, a little slight teaching on meditation. Let's practice. Allow your feet to be placed on the ground, unless you're sitting in lotus. Just begin to extract our attention away from the world of effects and circumstances. And in this particular moment, let's allow for our attention to be on our breath, our breathing. Begin to notice that it is literally impossible for you to breathe in the future or the past. That breath is happening now. It's present. So as you are aware of the breath, you're becoming more and more present. And in this present moment, let's establish an intention. Let's intend to wake up to our authentic nature. Not merely the construct of personality, but as the wonderful sacred koan says, the great riddle, show me the face you had before your parents were born. That particular riddle takes us out of the awareness that we're merely the son and daughter of our parents. Show us the face you had before your parents were born. It takes us beyond incarnation into an awareness that we've always been. With your attention on the breath and your intention to wake up to your real nature, which is the face you had before your parents were even born, the eternal, yet individual expression of the Most High, the presence that's never in absence. Intend to wake up for the next moment. The attention drifts. Bring the attention back to the breath and begin again, just for another few seconds. As you slowly open your eyes, we'll call this moment the pause that refreshes. Just take a moment away from phenomena. Turn within, intend to wake up for these precious moments. Be aware in this moment that you may be practicing with thousands of people who are tuning in to this precise moment of the practice of the art and science of meditation, which is creating a coherent field of love, loving kindness, compassion, and the consciousness of waking up. Peace and blessings. Have a beautiful day. Peace and blessings. I truly hope that you are enjoying Take Back Your Mind podcast. The Take Back Your Mind podcast is sponsored primarily by the Agape International Spiritual Center. In other words, everything that you see in terms of the staff that puts this together, the editing, the equipment, all of this is sponsored by our Agape International Spiritual Center. So if you are enjoying the podcast, I'm inviting you to support the sponsor. Support Agape. Simply go to agapelive.com and make a donation. And say in the donation that you are supporting the podcast. It allows us to keep broadcasting. It allows us to keep putting these magnificent moments together with these wonderful people that I get to interview. We keep having the possibility of updating the equipment that's necessary and providing the wonderful content that many of you are writing in and saying, I really love the podcast. Support the podcast. Support the sponsor. Agape International Spiritual Center. agapelive.com. You can also text to donate. You can text the word give to 424-321-6243 and put podcast so that we know that you're really supporting this wonderful podcast. Our secondary sponsor is Adaptozen, Adaptozen. This is my superfood greens. It's nutritionally dense because I teach spirit, mind, and body. We want our body temples to be healthy. So one of the products is my superfood greens. You can go to nutrarise.com. Those three little lines you see, you hit those three little lines and you'll see Adaptozen. There's two products, my superfood greens and a product called Elevate, which are organic mushrooms for your health. You can put both in your smoothies so that you have main ingredients for the health of your body temple. These are our sponsors. Primary sponsor, Agape International Spiritual Center. Secondary sponsor, Adaptozen. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be wise. Circulate and share. Peace and blessings. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for lending us your ear and participating in taking back your mind. If you want to submit a question for the question of the week, please submit it to podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please submit a review and let us know your thoughts. Stay on top of current episodes by subscribing to the podcast so that you'll receive alerts and not miss one single episode. And feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and family. And until we meet again, take back your mind and you will take back your life. Peace and blessings.